And as from skies of utmost height, unhappy Phaëthon beheld the earth receding from his view. Apallus spread his cheeks with sudden fear. His knees began to quake, and through the flare of vast effulgence, darkness closed his eyes. Now vainly he regrets he ever touched his father's steeds, and he is stunned with grief that so entreating he prevailed to know his true descent. He rather would be called the son of Merops. As a ship is tossed by raging Boreas, when the conquered helm has been abandoned, and the pilot leaves the vessel to his vows and to the gods, so, helpless, he is borne along the sky. What can he? Much of heaven remains behind. A longer distance is in front of him. Each way is measured in his anxious mind. At first his gaze is fixed upon the west, which fate has destined he shall never reach, and then his eyes turn backward to the east. So, stupefied and dazed, he neither dares to loose the bits, nor tighten on the reins, and he is ignorant of the horses' names. He sees horrific wonders scattered round, and images of hideous animals. And there's a spot where Scorpion bends his claws in double circles, and with tail and arms on either side, stretches his limbs throughout the space of 2 celestial signs. And when the lad beheld him, steeped in oozing slime of venom, swart, and threatening to strike grim wounds with jagged spear points, he was lost, and, fixed in chills of horror, dropped the reins. When these they felt upon their rising backs, the startled steeds sprang forthwith, and, unchecked, through atmospheres of regions unexplored, thence goaded by their unchecked violence, broke through the lawful bounds, and rushed upon the high-fixed stars. They dragged the chariot through devious ways, and soared amid the heights, dashed down deep pathways, far, precipitous, and gained a level near the scorching earth. Phoebe is wondering that her brother's steeds run lower than her own, and sees the smoke of scorching clouds. The highest altitudes are caught in flames, and as their moistures dry, they crack in chasms. The grass is blighted, trees are burnt up with their leaves. The ripe brown crops give fuel for self-destruction. Oh, what small complaints! Great cities perish with their walls, and peopled nations are consumed to dust. The forests and the mountains are destroyed. Cilician Taurus, Athos and Molus, and Oita are burning, and the far-famed Ida, and all her cooling rills are dry and burning, and virgin Helicon, and Hemos, later Oiagrius called, and Etna with tremendous redoubled flames, and double-peaked Parnassus, Sicilian Eryx, Cynthus, Othros, pine-clad and Rhodope, deprived his snowy mantle, and Dindyma, and Mycol, and Mimas, and Mount Cithaeron, famed for sacred rites, and Scythia, though a land of frost, is burning, and Caucasus, and Ossa burns with Pindus, and greater than those 2 Olympus burns, the lofty Alps, the cloud-topped Apennines. And Phaëthon, as he inhaled the air, burning and scorching as a furnace blast, and saw destruction on the flaming world, and his great chariot wreathed in quenchless fires, was suddenly unable to endure the heat, the smoke, and cinders, and he swooned away. If he had known the way, those winged steeds would rush as wild, unguided. Then the skin of Ethiopians took a swarthy hue, the hot blood tingling to the surface. Then the heat dried up the land of Libya. Dishevelled, the lorn nymphs, lamenting, sought for all their emptied springs and lakes in vain. Boeotia wailed for Dirce's cooling wave, and Argos wailed for Amymne's stream, and even Corinth for the clear Pyrenee. Not safer from the flames were distant streams. The Tanis in middle stream was steaming, and old Peneus, and Tithrantian Caicus, Ismenus, rapid and Arcadian Erymanthus, and even Xanthus destined for a second burning, and tawny-waved Lycormas, and Meander, turning and twisting, and Thracian Melis burns, and the Laconian Eurotas burns, the mighty Babylonian Euphrates, Orontes, and the Ganges, swift Thermodon, Easter and Phasis, and Alpheus boil. The banks of Sperchius burn, the gold of Tagus is melting in the flames. The swans, whose songs enhance the beauties of Maeonian banks, are scalded in the Caister's middle wave. The Nile, affrighted, fled to parts remote, and hid his head forever from the world. Now empty are his 7 mouths, and dry without, or wave, or stream. And also dry is Menian hubris, Strymon and the streams of Hesperland, the rivers Rhine and Rhone, and Po and Tiber, ruler of the world. And even as the ground asunder burst, the light amazed in gloomy Tartarus, the king infernal and his spouse. The sea contracted, and his level waste became a sandy desert. The huge mountain tops, once covered by the ocean's waves, reared up, by which the scattered Cyclades increased. Even the fishes sought for deeper pools. The crooked dolphins dared not skip the waves. The lifeless sea calves floated on the top, and it is even famed that Nereus hid with Doris and her daughters, deep below in seething caverns. With a dauntless mien thrice, Neptune tried to thrust his arms above the waters. Thrice, the heated air overcame his courage. Then the genial earth, although surrounded by the waters of the sea, was parched and dry, for all her streams had hid deep in the darkness of her winding caves. She lifted her productive countenance up to her rounded neck, and held her palms on her sad brows. And as the mountains huge trembled and tottered, beneath her wonted plain declined she for a space, and thus began, with parched voice, "If this is thy decree, O highest of the gods, if I have sinned, why do thy lightnings linger? For if doomed by fires consuming, I to perish must, let me now die in thy celestial flames, hurled by thine arm, and thus alleviate, by thine omnipotence, this agony. How difficult to open my parched mouth, and speak these words, the vapours choking her. Behold my scorching hair, and see the clouds of ashes falling on my blinded eyes, and on my features. What a recompense for my fertility! How often I have suffered from the wounds of crooked ploughs and rending harrows, tortured year by year. For this I give to cattle juicy leaves and fruits to man, and frankincense to thee. Suppose destruction is my just award, what have the waters and thy brother done? Why should thy brother's cooling waves decrease and thus recede so distant from the skies? If not thy brother's good, nor mine may touch thy mercy, let the pity of thy heaven, for lo, the smoking poles on either side attest, if flames consume them or destroy, the ruin of thy palace. Atlas, huge, with restive shoulders, hardly can support the burning heavens. If the seas and lands together perish and thy palace fall, the universe confused will plunge once more to ancient chaos. Save it from this wreck, if anything survive the fury of the flames." So made the tortured earth an end of speech, and she was fain to hide her countenance in caves that border on the nether night. But now the Almighty Father, having called to witness all the gods of heaven, and him who gave the car, that, else his power be shown, must perish all in dire confusion, high he mounted to the altitude from which he spreads the mantling clouds, and fulminates his dreadful thunders and swift lightning bolts, terrific. Clouds were none to find on the earth, and the surrounding skies were void of rain. Jove, having reached that summit, stood and poised in his almighty hand a flashing dart, and, hurling it, deprived of life, and seat the youthful charioteer, and struck with fire the raging flames. And by the same great force those flames enveloping the earth were quenched, and he who caused their fury lost his life. Frantic in their affright, the horses sprang across the bounded way, and cast their yokes, and through the tangled harness lightly leaped. And here the scattered harness lay, and there the shattered axle, wrenched from off the pole, and various portions of the broken car. Spokes of the broken wheel were scattered round, and far fell Phaëthon with flaming hair, as haply from the summer sky appears a falling star, although it never drops to startled earth. Far distant from his home, the deep Eridanus received the lad and bathed his foaming face. His body charred by triple flames, Hesperian naiads bore, still smoking, to a tomb, and this engraved upon the stone. Here Phaëthon's remains lie buried, he who drove his father's car and fell, although he made a great attempt.